Welcome back to another episode of the Mainly Hoops podcast. We're back with another Big Ten team preview here with the Washington Huskies. Before we do dive in, if you have been enjoying our content so far this offseason, please go ahead and like and subscribe. We do appreciate everyone's support. But diving in here, first to the offensive side of the ball, we've got a Washington offense that at least appears to be more talented than we've had, over the last couple of seasons. So we'll start with strengths here first. Cody, what do you see for strengths on the offensive side?
Yeah, for me, it's the perimeter talent and shot making. I think it's a much improved roster in that regard this season, and the additions of Wesley Yates, Kamari Peterson, and Desmond Claude, I think they're automatically going to raise the floor for this offense. Just the personnel was very lacking last year, but that's not going to be a problem here in year two for Danny Sprinkle. Yates and Peterson are particularly great on the perimeter. 43.9% from three and 42% respectively from three, and they both show a competent ability on and off the ball. So I think these are two guys that are going to mesh very well right away. So I don't really see any issues with that. And then in a faster paced offense, I think it's going to be more of a seamless transition. And a guy like Desmond Claude, I think he's going to be in a better spot than he was last year at USC. Like, he now has competent spacing around him, and he won't have as much on ball responsibility in general. I do think he's more of a primary option as a whole. So playing off the ball, I have like my small share of concerns, but I just think playing around more talent, more spacing is going to help him out. And then some bench options in Zoom Diallo and JJ Mandaquit, the 4-star. I think it rounds out a pretty deep perimeter group, so they're going to have a lot of optionality with this perimeter group. There's some front court skill as well. It's led by Hannes Steinbach and Lathan Somerville. You would have had Jacob Ognisevich in the mix, but I think he's out for like 3 months with I believe it was a foot injury. I don't know if he broke his foot or whatever, but I still think they have enough depth to mask that loss there. And Steinbach is a guy that a lot of people have loved as an international recruit. I think they picked him up like at the end of last season, so this is a guy that they wanted for a long time. I think he has some projectability as a roll man creator, like a handoff hub, or even a little bit as a pick and pop threat. He can slide down and play the 4 as well, and be able to provide some competent ability as a spot up guy. And I don't know if everything comes together right away with him, but I think if he sticks around for an extra year, I think he's going to have a lot of success here at Washington. And there are a lot of players on this roster that have talent on the ball, but also possess off the ball qualities, which I think gives this offense some real upside from an efficiency perspective. It's a slightly different build from past Sprinkles teams that are typically more post centric, but the perimeter talent here is probably gonna force a change, which is probably for the better, particularly with their half court offense.
Yeah, I think that was the main thing that I saw in this team is its depth, right? It's a much deeper team than we saw, in Washington last year. Bring Wesley Yates back here, right? Des Claude, of course, he's been productive in his career wherever he's been. Peterson can really shoot the ball, so I think like it should be a much more fun team to watch this year compared to years past, because the perimeter group has some more punch. It's too bad about Ognisevich and his injury. I think it would have been interesting. We'll see him, I think, later in the year, probably like the back half of like Big Ten play. But it is too bad that we're going to miss him kind of early in the season, because I think he could have been an important piece for this team, particularly, as like that pick and pop guy. Shot it at 41% last year from 3. But for me, on the weaknesses of the offense, I have a few things. One being, the overall like 3-point shooting depth of this team, right? We mentioned a stronger guard group, but like Des Claude's a guy that lives in the mid range. Zoom Diallo is a guy who I think likes to get more to the rim. Wesley Yates and Peterson both can really shoot the ball. They're kind of like their two main guys. I think if they had Ognisevich, it would be a bit um, better feeling with the shooting. But with it how it is right now, I do have some concerns with the overall like shooting depth. Des Claude's like a 30% career 3-point shooter. We saw Zoom Diallo last year, low volume, but 18%. He just doesn't really want to shoot the three ball at all. He shot 33 threes compared to 109 shots at the rim and 245 twos. He's very much rim reliant. Um, and that leads me kind of to my next point. I don't love the overall like shot diet of some of these guys. We've talked about, and in some other teams previews, just like teams who like to kind of live in the mid range. It's not never really a fantastic uh, outcome in today's game, right? You look at, like I mentioned, Zoom Diallo doesn't take a lot of shots behind the arc. He took 136 shots inside the arc, but non rim attempts last year. Desmond Claude, same thing, 109 shots in the mid range last year. He just those are tough shots in today's game, right? So I don't really like love the overall shot diet, or at least how it projects for this team. And then the final thing, I think this team could have some pretty serious turnover issues. Desmond Claude, 22% turnover rate guy last year, 20% for his career. Um, Zoom Diallo, 20 or 19% turnover rate. Wesley Yates, 16%. He's more, you look at his assist numbers, he's more just kind of looking to score anyway. So chances are his turnovers could end up just being like more bad shots, which obviously don't show up in the turnover category. And then Kamari Peterson, he takes care of the ball fairly well, but I think like as a whole, while there is more guard depth and more of a guard punch here, I think there are some turnover concerns overall with this group.
Yeah, I could definitely see that, and I think it would come from more Desmond Claude on the ball. I think that's kind of just a concern I have is kind of his fit on this roster. I'm not really sure what the role is exactly going to look like. Like, is he going to be operating as, the main option on the wing, or is he going to be playing more of a secondary role? Because I don't really like his off ball ability as a whole. Like, he just lacks like a catch and shoot ability. And yeah, like you mentioned, the shot diet isn't fantastic. I do think Sprinkle can kind of take some of those shot diet issues out of him. I think he's a guy who's able to get to the rim consistently. And I think playing in transition, I think that's going to only help him. He gets to the line at a high rate. And Sprinkle likes to, kind of optimize like getting to the rim or taking a three. And I think Claude could kind of operate as a primary option who's looking to get downhill and making a play from there. But ultimately the fit is a little bit odd with him. They have a couple other guys and Diallo and Mandaquit who sort of struggle to shoot the ball, making them like odd fits when they aren't a primary role. And I think Wesley Yates is he's going to be a guy in this offense. He's going to demand on ball usage. So there's only one basketball, and I think some of these guys don't fit like perfectly well. I think as a whole, it'll go rather smoothly as the season goes on. But I think those are just a few things to note. I don't think this is going to be a great team on the offensive glass. I think outside of Frank Kepnong, who's really good on the glass, it's just like his availability isn't always there. He's been hurt throughout his entire career, and he's not going to be able to stay on the floor for all 40 minutes. And I don't think there's not many guys that provide value outside of him. So I think it's going to have to be an efficiency based offense that I think they're going to have to take care of the ball fairly well, which I think they're going to be okay in that area for the most part, just because I think they have enough depth of ball handlers to be fine. But if those two things are a concern, it's going to put a lot on the scoring efficiency.
Yeah, no, that's for sure. So looking now at the other side of the ball, what do you see for strengths in this Washington team?
Yeah, I think it's the positional size and depth of this roster. Like, starting on the perimeter, I think Peterson, Yates, and Claude are all like well-built perimeter players. Like they might not be awesome individual defenders, but I think they're able to defend multiple positions at the very least, and they play with physicality. The front court group, I think, is going to at least be a nice rebounding duo, Steinbach and Kepnang. And Kepnang's a great rim protector. Like when he's on the floor, he had a 10.6% block rate last season. Mentioned that he struggled with injuries. I don't think he's ever played like over like 30% of a of the minutes share in his whole career. I mean, he's played for what? I think this is his fifth year now, and he just struggled with injuries pretty much every season. But if he's on the floor, I think he's a real defensive impact and can kind of unlock this team's upside to an extent. You know, you have other guys down the board like Lathan Somerville, not a great defender, but he's another body to throw in there. Matty Traore, coming from JUCO, he was at Maryland before he went to the JUCO, and he provides some rim protection as well. Not sure how much he's going to play. And then Christian Nitu coming from Florida State, there's just another body that they can throw in there. So there's a good amount of depth across the board, and I think that's going to help this team just be able to throw in fresh bodies with a fast paced mindset with Sprinkle.
Yeah, no, I think that's fair. I'd put down, I think this team will be fairly good on the defensive glass, especially if Kepnang can, stay on the floor. I mean, I feel like his name's been around for a while now. Yeah, I mean he started in 2021 at Oregon, and now we're all the way to 2025, 26. So he's been around and hasn't played he's had 4 of his 5 seasons so far where he's played in less than 15 games or 16 games. So hasn't really it's hard to count on him being available, which kind of leads me into a weakness. I think like the overall rim protection depth of this team isn't fantastic. Like Kepnang has been a career 10% block rate guy, but he's never played more than 36.1% of minutes, which was back in 2022 at Oregon. And last year was the most he'd played since then. In 14 games, he played a 23.1% minute share. So I think like behind him, like you mentioned, Somerville is not a fantastic defender. Steinbeck, we'll see. I mean, it's hard to kind of project, what he's going to be early on, at least. I think he could maybe potentially provide a little bit of value in that area, but I just don't really see a strong like rim protection group as a whole. I'm not in love, like you mentioned. The perimeter group has the ability to guard multiple positions, but I'm not in love with like the individual on-ball defenders on the perimeter. Particularly like a guy like Desmond Claude. I'm not really that high on him as a defender at all. He doesn't really create a ton of plays on this end of the floor. He's a career 1.6% steal rate guy. I just don't really see it. Wesley Yates is fine. He can create some plays, in transition defensively, but he's more of an offensive minded guy. I just don't really love the on ball defenders across the board here. Zoom Diallo, not really all that great. You got a guy like Kamari Peterson who does have a career 3.2% steal rate. So I think he is the one guy who could create some issues on the ball for teams. But overall, not in love with it, which is kind of why, like, I don't really like the turnover forcing upside of this defense. We saw Danny Sprinkle's defense there last year, finished 203rd in turnover rate defense. I just, maybe it's a little bit better this year with the addition of Peterson, but I don't really know how much better it's going to be. So I think those are my main concerns for this defense.
Yeah, Peterson's, I would definitely assume he's going to be their best on-ball defender, but at 6'1", I don't think he's all that like switchable. I don't think he can guard like every team's best perimeter option. There's going to be some guys that he's just not able to defend. I think Claude and Yates are going to have to step up, and at the very least, they have that positional size. Like I mentioned, I don't think it's going to be fantastic, but yeah, I mean the rim protection concern is very fair. Like when Kepnong is not on the floor. I mean, we saw this story last year. I mean, you had to play Great Osipor at the five, and you had to play Wilhelm Breidenbach at the five as well, which was not a pretty sight to see. He just wasn't a really good defender throughout his career, and like with a similar setup, if you let's just say Kepnong only plays 30% of the minutes, and I think it's a pretty similar defensive roster build around him this season. They finished 128th in adjusted defense last season. If Kepnong's not able to play 40 or 50% of the minutes, I think we could run into the same type of story because it's so important in a drop coverage scheme to have that true rim anchor, and they just kind of lack one behind him, and obviously the scheme is going to force less turnovers. So if the rim protection's lacking and you're not getting after opposing offenses, like it's just going to create a poor outlook overall. So yeah, I think it's fair to say that this is a pretty lopsided team. It's going to be a good offense. I think it's going to be pretty good right away, but it's probably going to be one of the worst defenses in the league.
Yeah, I would agree. So, looking now at team MVP and X Factor, what do you see in this group?
Yeah, Wesley Yates is my team MVP. I just think he's the most talented offensive option on this team. And, when you put him in a more open style and allow him to operate with the ball in his hands a little bit more, you saw it at USC, like the last 15 or 16 games of the year. He averaged I think it was somewhere between 17 and 18 points a game. I don't have the exact number in front of me, but he was, he was very good with more usage, and he was able to coexist with Desmond Claude and still have success. And, we can see that same story again. But my X factor, I think this one's straightforward. I don't know if you're going to have the same guy. I went with Frank Kepnong. I just think he has to stay on the floor for more than 30% of minutes. And if he does, I think this kind of unlocks a little bit for the defensive side. And there's no one really behind him that can provide real value as a rim protector unless it's a guy like Matty Traore. But I don't know what that role is going to look like for him. So yeah, Kepnong, just stay on the floor. If you can play 50% of minutes, like Washington has they have a real chance of making the tournament again.
Yeah, I agree. It was pretty straightforward for me. I mean, I went Wesley Yates at MVP. I think he's their best offensive talent. He's really fun to watch, I think, especially as the season went on last year at USC. And then for the same reasons, I went with Frank Kepnong as my X factor. I think the front court, especially on the defensive end, is really gonna fall on him. So we'll see whether he can stay on the floor. Ceiling and floor for this team, and then a bold prediction. Where do you see them finishing?
I think they could finish 8th in the Big Ten, and I think that's good enough to get them into the tournament. I think they can be a 7 or 8 seed in the tournament with that mark in this league. I just think the offense is going to be it's very good. It has a ton of upside, but if if the defense isn't good enough, if nobody's able to replace Kepnong as a rim protector, I think they can finish 15th in the league. I rated out every single defense in this league. I had this team in last overall. So, and if the offensive fit isn't as good as we kind of think it is early on, there's potential for this to go very poorly.
Yeah, I had them with a very wide range of outcomes. I've had them at their ceiling at 7th because I think there's enough offensive talent here. I think they definitely can make the tournament, but also at their floor, I had them at 15th because I think there could be real issues on the defensive end. Especially if Kepnong, can't stay on the floor. So, it's a pretty wide range where they could, be, firmly in the tournament or not even be close. So fighting to even make the Big Ten tournament. So we'll see what happens in terms of my not my X factor, my bold prediction. I went with a Wesley Yates stat. This is kind of out there, but we'll see what happens. I think he can average. He's going to average 18 a game and go 50, 40, 90.
Okay. I mean, I had a Wesley Yates stat too, and it's pretty close. I didn't have the 50, 40, 90, but I said he's going to average 19 a game. So I think we're
Okay.
kind of in the same boat there. I'm not like I don't think he's a 44% 3-point shooting talent. I think he's a good shooter. I could see him getting back to like or not getting back, but I could see him kind of regressing to a 36, 37% mark. But ultimately, I think you're playing at a faster pace. Arguably, I mean, I don't think it's arguably. I think it's just a better offensive scheme than the Musselman scheme. So I just think there's more room to grow for him.
Yeah, no, I would agree. I think it'll be fun to watch. I think this offense, if it reaches its ceiling, will be fun to watch, but we'll find out here in just over 3 weeks. But thank you for listening to the Mainly Hoops podcast, and we'll see you next time.